Okay, this is Brother Wolf. This is HS 285, and tonight we have Group 3. They're going to be talking to us about accreditation. Um, Keep in mind, earlier tonight, and you'll all see when I post the link to the recording, we had Group 4 present on Joint Commission. And so Joint Commission is such a large accrediting body that we kind of took that out and had another group present just on that topic. But this group, you'll want to listen to group 3 first, I think, and then go on to listen to group 4, because group 3 kind of gives an overview. I'm sure you guys will talk about maybe some of the other accrediting bodies. You may mention Joint Commission, but just keep in mind that group 4 has a much more in-depth presentation on Joint Commission. So with that said, I'm going to turn the time over to Group 3, and I believe James is going to start. Feel free to start whenever you're ready.
I'm James Stewart, and this is Group 3, and I have with me Leah Coons and Akita McDougall, and we're talking tonight about accreditation of healthcare organizations. So what is accreditation? There are several organizations that can accredit a healthcare organization. The federal government has its own set of standards, and every healthcare organization has to meet those. And then they can go above and beyond that to be accredited by another organization. So one such organization is the Joint Commission on Accreditation of Healthcare Organization. And they are the gold standard in the industry. They have the highest set of standards. Their standards are above those of the federal government. So a lot of organizations will want to be accredited by the Joint Commission so that their patients know that they have the highest standard of care, which they call the gold standard. And that is basically what accreditation means, being accredited by the Joint Commission specifically. So it is a voluntary process, but again, organizations want to do it because it attracts more business to let people know that they have good quality care. And it's not automatically renewed. The Joint Commission will come in and do a review every couple of years to make sure that hospitals meet their requirements. And so hospitals want to constantly be up to date on their materials and on their service and everything that they provide, just so that they can constantly pass the examination and the application process. Accreditation can be costly. It can cost anywhere between roughly $2,000 and $37,000, and that depends on the size of the facility that's being accredited. 82% of hospitals are accredited, which accounts for about 45,000 hospitals. And in all, there are more than 20,000 healthcare organizations in the U.S. that are accredited by the Joint Commission. And that also includes programs, apart from healthcare facilities.
Okay, so I know Group 4 is going to touch more about what the Joint Commission is, but I wanted to just kind of briefly go a little bit what it is, not a lot, but just a little bit. So the Joint Commission, they were founded in 1917 as a joint effort between the American College of Surgeons and then the American Hospital Association. And then their main goal is to improve and keep improving the quality of care provided in hospitals and facilities. So accreditation with provider organizations, like James said, is your process. It's voluntary, sorry. And so when an organization gets that approval, that's saying that they're good enough that that they pass that survey process. Like James also said, the Joint Commission, they're the dominant force in accreditation, and kind of just like a double whammy that if you're accredited through the Joint Commission, you automatically qualify for CDC through SNES, and you're given this that you're certified through them. So there's a ton of other organizations that provide accreditation. Leah will be talking about ISO 9000 later, and then the Ambulatory Surgery Center for Association, and they share a role with the Joint Commission, similar roles with the Joint Commission, and then there's so many others like the American Association for Accreditation of Ambulatory Surgery Facilities, and the Accreditation Commission for Healthcare, and then the American Association for Ambulatory Healthcare, and then the American Osteopathic Association. And so there's all these other organizations that you can get accredited through, but like I said before, the Joint Commission is the main dominant force in accreditation because they provide, there's a lot of benefits with becoming accredited with the Joint Commission. I'm just going to say a few. Group 4 will probably touch on some of them, but they provide, when you're kind of accredited through the Joint Commission, provide competitive in the healthcare marketplace, and they also provide a lot of good feedback with when they come in for those inspections, and they give a very good review on what you can do better or what you did really well on. So to be eligible, hospital has to be in the U.S. or operated by the U.S. If it's outside of the country. You're continually assessing and improving the services that you provide, and you identify in like website or your brochure or anything on what kind of services that you provide to the community, and then you kind of follow that standard on what the Joint Commission kind of states on what kind of services. So the accreditation survey process, specifically the Joint Commission, they send out surveys or inspections every 3 years. So once you become accredited through them, you can get an unannounced inspection, usually between 18 to 36 months of when you've become accredited. They recently started this tracer method where they follow patients that stay at their hospital, and then they follow them through the course of their treatment and then through every department that they go through. Like I said, a big benefit to be accredited through the Commission is that once they do your inspection, they go and send a report on what they send to you a report on what you can improve on, and that's a really big benefit for a lot of hospitals because then they'll know what they can target more, and it shows that they are continually trying to become better on the services that they provide. And after the survey process, they get a decision on whether or not they can continue to be accredited or they have been accredited. So moving on to board certification. So with board certification, it usually happens after medical school, and like a accreditation volunteer process. It's not required like a medical licensure is, and it's also not specific. You can be board certified in many specialties or subspecialties, and that you choose, and it also demonstrates that their level of clinical care is the highest level that they can receive. So the purpose of board certification, you need to be an MD or DO completes medical school, and they receive their diploma, and afterwards they can complete the residency in their chosen specialty. They usually need to have 2 letters of recommendation and have an unrestricted medical license. They take the board certification exam through their proper college or academy. So there's many different specialties. For example, there's cardiology or pulmonary, neurosurgical, thoracic surgery, and then there's just so many more. Each specialty has its own college or academy. There's 3 main kinds. There's the American College of Family Practice, the American College of Surgeons, and the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology. And each one gives its own board certification exam, and they help enhance, and when doctors and physicians pass that certification exam, it helps enhance their careers by a lot. And just like I said again, when you become board certified when you pass the administered board certification exam. So the American Board of Medical Specialties, they give that gold star to physicians and doctors, and they're a national organization, and they oversee and verify the consistency of a lot of the different colleges and academies that I had stated, and they help manage the process of the exams, and they help coordinate activities that help to continue board certification. So, like that gold star that I said, it's awarded by the American Board of Medical Specialties, and when physicians and doctors see that, it kind of states that it's the physician, the doctor, they're an expert in that particular specialty or a subspecialty that they decided to get board certified in. It shows the physician's commitment and expertise in that specialty, and it shows that they're qualified to be responsive and patient-focused in the kind of care that they give. And a lot of healthcare organizations and employers and patients, they look for that gold star, so it's a very big benefit to doctors and physicians to get that gold star. And just like I said again, they can be certified or get that gold star in more than one specialty. So it's a very good thing to have when a physician or a doctor is board certified.
All right, and so for ISO, it stands for International Organization for Standardization, and it's non-governmental, and it's independent, and it's made of members from 163 different countries, and it's also the world's largest developer of voluntary international studies. And so ISO is just standards. It's not an accrediting body, because I thought it was at first, but later on when I talk about the interview with an employee from Madison Memorial Hospital, he helped me learn that it wasn't like their accrediting body, but they go by their standards also with that. And so with ISO structure, we have the Central Secretariat, which is located in Switzerland, and they do the day-to-day operations, and they're under the guidance of a Secretary General. And then there's the General Assembly, which is the ultimate authority, and then there's the Council that takes care of government issues, and they meet twice a year to go over things. And under the Council, there's members of groups that are in specific things. And so we have the Presidential Committee, which oversees the decision of the Council. And we also have the Council Standing, and it advises on strategic and financial matters. And then we also have the technical committees and the TMB, and they're responsible for just the technical work that goes into their standards. And so to get most of my information, I looked on just their own website, and on the website they said that a standard is a document that provides requirements, specifications, guidelines, or characteristics that can be used consistently to ensure that materials, products, processes, and services are fit for their purpose. And so they just help make sure that services and products are safe and reliable, but also of good quality. And by doing this, it helps just reduce costs by minimizing waste and errors. And you can do next slide. Madison Memorial they follow the standards for ISO 9000, which is getting updated to 9001, and their main focus is just on aspects of quality management. And so it contains just those standards as their main focus, while there's other organizations that don't have to do with medical care that follow different standards of ISO. And so with for ISO 9000, it does quality care management system. It covers basic concepts and language, guidance on internal and external audits, and focuses on how a quality management system can be more effective. And so I actually called Madison Memorial Hospital, and I talked with, I believe his name, Nolan, and he's over risk management. And when I mentioned ISO, he kind of corrected me that they're not accredited by it, but that they're actually accredited by DNV, which is pronounced the Det Norske Veritas. And so I just talked about that with him, and he just mentioned the 4 bodies of accrediting bodies of Joint Commission, which we talked about, the AOA, and then there's the DNV and the CIHQ. And he said that mainly they all have the basic standards. They're pretty much the same. And so I asked him why did they pick DNV since they have the ISO standards? And he said that they like the philosophy direction of the DNV, and it incorporates the ISO standards, compliance with ISO, and it actually come in once a year to do a surprise audit. So they like that they check up on them more. And he said that because of this, it kind of caught the Joint Commission's attention to maybe they need to come in more to check on their hospitals. But they're actually, in 2009, they're officially accredited. Before that, the state just accredited them with their basic standards. But it was just very interesting to talk to him about why DNV, and he just pretty much said just the standards and philosophy of that. And I kind of think just because he also said that DNV is kind of a newer accrediting body coming out, and so they wanted to go with them because they're growing. They want a growing accrediting body. While they said the CIHQ had good standards, it just was going to have a cap of how many people they wanted to accreditate. So they wanted someone that didn't have a lot of hospitals, like the Joint Commission, because they've been around for a while. And so they really liked the DNV and how they were growing, and they just had probably the right amount of standards that they needed for Madison Memorial Hospital. Yeah, and on the next slide, we have our sources, and that's the end of our presentation.
Excellent job. You guys hit all the major and required portions that we needed to cover as a class. So great job. I wanted to share, I'm going to share my screen for a second. If I can get this to work. And I want to share, can you see this Madison Memorial webpage, and it says DNV Business Assurance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. So this is straight from their website. So you're absolutely right. The DNV is the name of the group that is the accrediting body, and DNV uses I don't know if you can see me trying to highlight this. Whoops, the ISO in the center, ISO 9001. Somebody call, or I'm sorry, colon 2008. Right? Do you see that?
Mhm.
Yeah.
So, and you can kind of see here, the dates that it's valid for. It was issued, March 2013. It's valid until August 2015. You can see who the lead auditor was. And then down here, you can see that, and I think James mentioned, or may have been Akita, you guys talked about the deemed status for Joint Commission. Well, DNV also has deemed status. So if you get accredited by DNV, then it's deemed to be in compliance with the Medicare conditions of participation. So,
I did not know that.
yeah, so that's kind of interesting, right? And I wanted to show, I think there's one other, I wanted to see what this is. Oh, it's the same. So, oh wait, it's opening up. So I'm glad you, Leah, got that confirmation and clarification that ISO, they're a set of standards, but ISO is not an accrediting body in and of themselves, right? So somebody has to go out and do the audit and be familiar with healthcare and go through that process.
Mhm.
But they use the ISO standards. I currently, so I'm going to stop sharing that screen. We kind of got an idea now. And actually, it's interesting because this is right off of, if you scroll down, sorry, I do want to show you one last thing. Okay, do you guys see this web page? It's the Madison Memorial.
Yeah.
And if you scroll down to the very bottom, you see that accreditation section? That's what I was clicking on to show you those last few images that I had. So a lot of hospitals will, kind of put it in a prominent place on their web page usually. It's usually something they want to tout or brag about in a way because they're meeting some standards that helps people understand, look, we have a process in place to assess our quality, to continually improve. Quality improvement is never officially over, right? You're always working to be better. No matter how good you are, you're always trying to be even better. So a lot of hospitals will have that on their web page.
Which it's interesting because, I mean, do they do it more to show patience? Because I wouldn't even think to look, I don't know, for accrediting bodies until I took this class.
Well, I think
know.
both. I mean, I think both patients and maybe other. So keep in mind that Madison Memorial and other hospitals, their main focus, right, is patient outreach. But what other business partners are they interested in informing about their accreditation? Can you think of any others that might not be their patients, but who else do hospitals and healthcare providers interact with frequently?
Specialty office send a patient to a different type of doctor, I guess.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, James, I didn't catch the first part. Can you say that again?
Specialty offices.
And what do you mean by that, specialty offices?
If they send a patient, for instance, to a occupational therapist, if the hospital doesn't have one there.
Oh.
Yeah, good point. So, other agencies will want to know that. So that's a good one. And who else? I mean, how do hospitals get paid?
By
insurance companies, right? Mm-hmm. So hospitals are competing, right? They want to be on an insurance plan. They want to be, on this insurance plan's list of hospitals that are covered, right? And so they frequently insurance carriers will either require certain accreditation, or it might be a factor that they consider when they put hospital X on their insurance plan. So it kind of shows, so they're also they're competing with other hospitals to get on these insurance plans. And does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that does make sense.
So that's another way. That's another interested party. Not all patients know about these accreditation. They're just interested generally, right? That hospitals are giving quality care.
Mm-hmm.
Some patients are a little bit more, I don't know, interested in those kinds of details, and that might make a difference to them. Another thing is that you can receive accreditation in very specific services. So what you guys have discussed is kind of accrediting the entire hospital, right? But some hospitals might want to cater towards women's health, right, or OBGYN. Well, there are additional sub-accreditations that you can get that will say, look, we have, not only are we accredited generally as a hospital, but we achieved, standard XYZ in OBGYN care, or in cardiac care, or in heart attacks, or in strokes, or in cancer. So a lot of, you'll see some of these subspecialty accreditations that are additional quality standards for these different service lines, if you will. I don't know if that makes sense. I mean, think about BYU Idaho for a second. So let's leave healthcare and let's just go to education. Is BYU Idaho accredited?
Yes.
Yeah, and who are they accredited by?
Not sure, but it did.
So it's the Northwest, it's NWSC if I remember it right. But there are different regional accrediting bodies even in education, right? So you could technically probably just open up a college if you wanted, but in order to qualify for federal aid for students, in order for students to get loans and those sorts of things, and the university or the college has to be accredited by an accrediting body that's recognized by the U.S. Department of Education. Okay, so it's a way to kind of ensure, yep, this university is following certain standards in education, and it's very similar. A lot of us probably don't know all the details of a university's accreditation, but if a university loses their accreditation, quickly their degrees don't mean much out in the marketplace. Usually, some employers, for example, say you have to have a bachelor's degree from an accredited university. Okay, and it's similar in healthcare that a lot of insurance companies will say, look, before you're on our plan, you have to be accredited by X, Y, or Z. And then you guys have mentioned, as I showed you on that image, Medicare, which is the largest payer, right? You don't have to be, you don't have to receive reimbursement from Medicare, but to survive in reality,
Yeah, you'd have to have that.
if they're greater than 50% of the patients, they cover more than 50% of the patients in this country. So if you're not meeting the standards by that payer, you're not going to get much reimbursement. And so, but Medicare says, look, you don't even have to go through Joint Commission. You don't have to go through DNV. You can, if you want, you can just meet our conditions of participation. Excuse me, but that only qualifies you for reimbursement from them. What about Blue Cross Blue Shield? What about United Healthcare? What about these other? So a lot of these hospitals are saying, look, let's go for the best quality we can get. We'll get accreditation by this body or that body, and it'll kill 2 or 3 birds with one stone. That's why that deemed status is important, because it not only gets you recognized by Medicare and Medicaid, but it also might get you recognized by Blue Cross and these other insurance companies. So really great job. I want to come back to Keita, I think it was your slides talking about the board certifications, and you guys hit that right on the head. That was good. I wanted to make the analogy between, first of all, both are voluntary, right? So hospital accreditation is voluntary. Board certification is voluntary. But when we use the term board certification, we're talking about physicians. When we use the term accreditation, we're talking about hospitals. But there's an analogy there. Both are voluntary, okay? Both are highly sought after and advantageous, but you don't need it legally to practice, right? You can legally practice without it, but again, on the physician side, a lot of health plans won't include you in their panel unless you're board certified, okay? And it is kind of it's one of those higher standards, and for all intents and purposes, most physicians seek board certification. And very similar to hospital accreditation, where it's not, you don't just do it one time and then you're done for life, right? You guys mentioned that there might be a 3-year renewal, there's some unannounced audits on site, those sorts of things. On the physician side, you get that board certification and you might need to renew it every 3 years, and what you do between those 3 years is you get things called continuing medical education, CME. So you'll see that a lot, and even some hospitals will have their own CME office. They'll offer physicians continuing medical education seminars or workshops or conferences, and a lot of physicians will seek those CMEs, or continuing medical education, and that helps them maintain their board certification once they have it. Some colleges, you mentioned some of these colleges, the College of Surgeons, OBGYN, American College of Family Physicians, those are just examples, right? There's a whole bunch of these. Dermatology has one, cardiology has one, radiology has one. But a lot of those, some of those colleges are requiring physicians to retake the boards in like maybe every 7 years or every 5 years. It can vary from college to college, but they're trying to increase the quality of their certification as well, to say, look, this means something. You don't just take the test once and then 20 years later you've never done continual learning. I mean, think about it. Medicine changes quicker than a lot of things, a lot of other industries, right? It changes so fast, and so that continuing effort and that continuing medical education is really important. The last thing I wanted to mention about ISO is it's not just for healthcare, right? And you guys referred to this, but the ISO standards are used in many industries. So I currently work for a medical device company. We manufacture medical devices. Now, the manufacturing process has a whole bunch of standards, as you can imagine, right? You have to have certain, sterile fields and sterile lines, and you have clean rooms, and you can't have particulate matter up to a certain percentage in these rooms, and those sorts of things. But we use ISO standards. So ISO is recognized internationally. If you mention that term, you might even see automakers who get certain ISO certifications, or makers of children's toys or something. Okay, so it's any sort of quality standard. There's typically something in ISO for a lot of organizations, not just healthcare. So excellent job. We have a couple classmates here. I want to see if they have any questions. You can either type in the chat box if you do, or you can unmute your microphone and ask them. And while we're seeing if they have any questions, do our presenters have any last-minute thoughts or comments?
I don't think.
I don't know.
Okay. If you do one thing for me, if one of you would post, if you haven't already done this, post the slides and any other materials that you might think would be helpful on the group presentation discussion board for this week. So it's not mandatory for members of the class to post in that discussion board, but that discussion board is a place for you to post your slides. I'll post the link to the recording there. But if you'll post those slides and then kind of follow that discussion board throughout the week and just see if anyone has any questions about your presentation or anything like that, that would be appreciated. I don't see that your classmates have asked any questions in the chat box, so that's fine. And unless anyone has anything else to say, I'll let you go. Great job.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good night.
You too.
Bye.